Welcome to Enjoying Everyday Life. Today I'm continuing my teaching on integrity and how important it is in your life. Well, I taught this message in Houston, Texas, and if you listen closely, I believe it's going to really help you in your walk with Christ.
I want to tell you something. The Bible is written for people's everyday lives. It's not just for some glorious event on Sunday morning for 45 minutes. This teaches us what to do with our money, how to have our needs met, how to not worry, how to get along with people. It teaches us everything about how to get some sleep at night to what to do when you get up in the morning. It teaches us about our eating habits. Talks about drinking water. There's everything in here that anybody could ever want to know. If you read this and live by it, you will have an awesome life. If you just read it and live by it, you will have an awesome life. Now, I'm not saying you'll never have any problems, but I will tell you one thing, the devil will not win. He will not win. Ooh, I just feel like I could get out there and have a fit tonight. I just feel like grabbing some people and shaking them and saying, please get this. You cannot be godly and always be popular. Don't play the world's games to climb the ladder of success. Trust God, because true promotion comes from Him. That He may know and understand me personally and practically, directly discerning and recognizing my character. That I am the Lord who practices loving kindness. I love that He doesn't just say He knows it, He practices it. See, we need to practice. We need to habitually practice what we know to do. And that's always that battle between flesh and spirit. Inside we know what's right, but the flesh pressures us to do what's wrong, and we're the only ones that can decide where we're going to cast our vote. Are we going to go with the flesh and get momentary relief and be happy right that minute, and then be miserable inside and lay down at night with a guilty conscience and a heavy feeling in our heart because we know we compromised, we know we didn't take a stand for God? Or are we going to let our flesh pout and suffer and be a little unhappy for a temporary period of time so we can have that joy unspeakable and full of glory on the inside? Which way are we going to go? Verse 25, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will punish all who, though circumcised outwardly in the flesh, wow, are still uncircumcised in corresponding inward purity. Well, there's so much in that. Under the old covenant, they were circumcised in the flesh. But that was supposed to be a sign of a willingness then to live a circumcised life. It was supposed to be an outward sign of an inward decision. But it got into an area where the people in the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant, they just stayed busy following rules and regulations. They wore scriptures on their head. They wore scriptures on their arms. They prayed loud in public places. They tithed on every leaf, mint, and, everything else. Lint, mint, and whatever. Go to Matthew 23. Let's take a look at them. Because you know what? I don't believe there's anything that disturbs people in the world today more than a phony. The world loves to yell, hypocrite, hypocrite. You go to church on Sunday and you don't act any different than anybody else does. Now, some people just use that as an excuse, to not live a godly life. And that's between them and God. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are not what they say we are. And if you know in your heart that what you're doing is right, I don't think what people say about you even bother you all that much. I think the only reason we get so mad sometimes is we're about halfway sure they're right. Let's just cruise through Matthew 23 for a minute. Verse 1, Then Jesus said to the multitudes and to his disciples, The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat of authority, so observe and practice all they tell you, but don't do what they do, for they preach, but they don't practice. Remember, Jeremiah said, God said, I practice. I practice loving kindness. I don't just send out a sermon about it. I don't just write it in my book. I practice it. I do it. They tie up heavy loads hard to bear and place them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not lift a finger to help them. They do all their works to be seen of men. And on and on and on. Talk about how they wear these scriptures, and they do this, and they do that. They love places of honor at the feast, and the best seats in the synagogues. Dear God, we need help. I can remember when the most important thing to me in church was to make sure nobody got in my front row seat. Don't you understand? I am an important person in this church. But I was believing for power to cast out devils. Is anybody awake here tonight? I mean, I'm not kidding. I look back now at, and we all should be able to do that. We all should be able to look back where we came from and just go, oh, yeah.
Well, it's time for a short break, but please stay with us, and when we return, author and pastor Bob Yandian will join me to discuss integrity in your life. Well, thank you for staying with us, and I believe it's going to be to your benefit that you did. Pastor Bob Yandian is joining me again today to talk about integrity in the workplace and in our private lives. Pastor Bob, Michelangelo spent a great deal of time painting in a corner, just like one little corner of this building he was working on. And it was a corner that nobody would even really see that much, but he just spent all kinds of time there. And a friend said to him, why are you spending so much time in that corner? Nobody's going to see it anyway. And he responded, God will.
Yeah.
Why is it so important for us to pay attention to little things that somebody else might not even notice?
Well, because it's not only important that God sees it, you see it.
Right.
And that's another thing. Whether the person knows God or not, you come back to even what Shakespeare said, to your own self be true. And you know what? I can walk away from that corner and think the world won't see it, but you know what? I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I never completed that. I never did what I should have done. There's times I look back on my own life and think I never completed that job. I should have done more. There's things in our own life we have to look back and ask for forgiveness for. And you know what? When you're comfortable inside yourself, then you project a better image in front of other people. You can really, reflect Jesus Christ. So it comes down to it that whether or not another person can see it. I heard a man say one time, he said, if you were shipwrecked on a desert island and you still had a razor blade, would you still shave every day? And some people said yes, some people said no, but it comes down to what do you think about yourself, not whether or not any traveling stranger coming by might see you. Integrity is what you do in private, not so much what you do in public.
I know that's really important to me, and I know different people have different ways they like to do things, but for me, even if I'm going to be in the house, home by myself all day, I prefer to still fix my hair a little bit and, get a little bit of makeup on and put on something decent to wear because I feel better about me.
Well, you have to walk by a mirror and look at yourself.
Yeah, when I do that. And like I said, I know some people, do different things, but I just feel like that it makes me feel better about myself. And I think so often people go around with a guilty conscience and it causes so many problems in our lives. And the guilty conscience is simply a result of not doing what you knew you should do to start with. It's that being excellent, going the extra mile, and our God is an excellent God. I mean, that says that all over the Bible, different places, that He is a God of excellence, and He's called us to be excellent, to excel at things. And the Apostle Paul even prayed that we would learn to choose and prize what was excellent, the highest things, the best things. And so often in our society today, people just do what they have to do to get by. But as God's children, He wants us to model excellence in front of the world.
Well, doing things to be seen of other people or have their acceptance, it really leads to a life of defeat. When you're satisfied with yourself, in essence, competing with yourself, I want to do better tomorrow than I did today. That is an area of integrity,
Right.
where you really are, you're not out competing with anybody out there. You just do it because it satisfies you. I was talking to one of our senators from Oklahoma one day, and I was asking, what's the major difference in Washington between, you hear about conservative and liberal, and you hear about Democrat, Republican, you hear about all these things. He said the bottom line comes down to integrity. He said, many approach their job as, I'm out there to do what people want me to do. He said, that's part of the job. He said, but there's also core areas of your life that never change. He said, if you ask some senators, how are you going to vote on this issue 10 years from now? They say, I don't know, we'd have to see what the people think 10 years from now. He said, there's certain core issues that I know 10 years from now, if I'm in office 15 years from now, I know today how I will vote on those issues there. That is integrity. Some people are so looking to the winds of change to do what people say, but integrity comes down to this. My methods may change, but my core beliefs will never change. And there's certain things that will just remain the same in my life. That is integrity.
And there's a lot of politicians that they do whatever they think is going to get them votes.
Right.
And that's really a very dangerous thing to do, because then you become a people pleaser.
Exactly.
Not a God pleaser. And you're going to end up losing in the end anyway,
Exactly.
because God is never going to permanently or for very long bless something that is not right and honest and pure.
Well, if I lose my position because I stand for integrity, I can't lose God. God will see to it I get another job. On top of that, it's just money. God can see to it I get money. And the most important thing is for me to be content in myself that I did what was right.
And Pastor, I really personally believe that a lot of times God is wanting to promote us, but we have to pass a test where we're at first. And I know in my own situation, years ago, I was working for a company, and the boss was not a Christian, and I was a bookkeeper at the company, and he wanted me to zero out, like somebody had double paid their bill,
Mm-hmm.
and so that meant they had like a $350 some odd credit, so we actually owed them money. And so it was the end of the month, time to send out the statements to show people what they owed us or what we owed them.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want them to know that we owed them money because he didn't want to give it to them, so he told me to just zero it out, to put a debit on there to cancel it out.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got their statement, it would have a zero balance on it. Well, it was a good job, and I had not been there all that long. And I just made a commitment to have a lot of work done on my teeth that was going to be very expensive. Dave and I only had one car at the time, and it was in an area where he could take me to work, drop me off. We had the same working hours. So there was a lot of reasons why I did not want to lose this job. And all night at home that night, I wrestled and wrestled and wrestled with, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I came up with all the excuses. Well, it's his company. It's not my problem. I'm just following instructions. Right. But when push came to shove, I knew that I had to go back into his office the next day and say, I'm sorry, but I can't do this.
Right.
And so I thought that I would get fired. And I went into his office and I said, I went real early because he always got there early. Oh, I was so scared, Bob. My heart was pounding. I was shaking. And I said, you know what? I'm a Christian, and I know that you're not. I know that you don't feel the same way that I do about things. But I said, I can't do what you're asking me to do on this statement, because to me, it would be like stealing their money. Mm-hmm. And, I said, I really don't want to lose my job. I like it. I need it. But I just can't do it.
Right.
And he was like, well, just get back out there and go to work. And all day, every time I saw him, I thought, well, he's going to fire me now. Mm-hmm. He's going to fire me now. He's going to fire me now. And at the end of the day, I'll never forget it, he came out and he took that statement and he put it down on my desk and he said, just send him a check. And from that day until the day that man died, mm-hmm. I kept getting promoted at that company. And even after he sold the company, mm-hmm. every year he would still send me a Christmas gift. And they said he never did that for anybody.
Wow.
So he respected me. And even though he didn't agree with my Christianity, he respected the principle and he respected the fact that I stood up for what I believed in. Mm-hmm. And Dave and I feel very strongly that today one of the reasons why Christians aren't respected in the world like they should be mm-hmm. is because they don't always stand up for what they believe in.
That's right.
When it comes down to, really taking a stand for what you believe, they back off.
Well, the world calls it situation ethics. My ethics will be what the situation is. And that's why, to me, it doesn't matter what the situation is. There's ethics in my life that don't change. And I'm not going to change. Paul made a statement, I thought it was a great statement he made to the pastors of the church at Ephesus. He said that you have been with me at all seasons. He said, and you've seen me publicly and from house to house. How you act in your house and from house to house is just as important as how you act publicly. So that's integrity.
Yeah, I think it's Luke chapter 12 says that everything that's hidden behind closed doors will ultimately come out in the open.
That's right.
And be shouted from the housetops. And it's very important to me, to the best of my ability, and none of us are perfect. You know, sometimes we say that we're going to do things, and it's based on the current knowledge we have. And as we talked about, you know, on the show previously, in a time like that, if you find out that you can't do what you said you were going to do, then you need to go back and just tell somebody, you know, I spoke out of emotions, or I spoke based on my current knowledge, and I'm sorry that I can't do that, but I would like to do this, you know, to try to make it better for you. But the thing is as much as we possibly can, we need to not only keep our word, but we need to also be honest and do the thing that we believe that God would have us do. And we need to do it because we love God, and we need to know then that we will have a reward from God if we will do what's right.
Even if your boss had never accepted Jesus and may not have.
Yeah.
He looked at you and saw something in you that he wished he had himself. And even though he was mad about it, there was a great respect. And I think Christians need to understand that. They sometimes think, well, I don't want to make people mad. Well, sometimes you can't help but make people mad. Integrity will rub some people the wrong way. But the most important thing is it may be the rubbing the wrong way that eventually causes them to accept Christ.
You know, when I look back on that incident, because I remember it was a pretty major thing for me at the time. I mean, it was, you know, Dave and I were just young, and, you know, we had kids, and the whole going to work thing was a big decision for me. And then having made the commitment that I did, and I remember I had committed to about $1,200 worth of work on my teeth, because we had been without money for so long that I had to let my teeth go, and I needed a lot of work done on them. And I mean, $1,200 35 years ago was a tremendous amount of money. And so knowing that I had that commitment, and actually they'd already started drilling on my teeth, and I had some temporary caps on, I couldn't just drop it in the middle. And I thought, what if I lose this job? And it was such a major deal for me. But I look back now, and you know, and I don't mean to be overly melodramatic, but I'm not sure that I would be where I'm at today if I would not have done what I knew was right at that time. And it's just really important to me for people to realize that a lot of these things that come up in their lives, God is watching, and it may very well be a test to see how you're going to handle yourself, to see if God can trust you with that next level of income or that next level of power that he wants to give us.
So integrity is really that proving of yourself to God that you're worthy of the next step, because no one starts up here. You start down here. And it's integrity that causes you to come to the next step, and integrity that causes you to come to the next step. God never says we'll stand before him one day and he'll say, well done, thou good and qualified servant. He's going to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. What causes promotion is faithfulness, integrity, doing what's right, despite the fact you might have been ignorant of certain things. You know, qualifications. I have a lady in our church, and she's got the job she has today, and all the other applicants had great qualifications, education, but he saw one thing in her he had not seen: integrity. He said, you know what, I can train you. God told me a long time ago, you can teach them qualifications, but you can't teach them faithfulness. You can't teach integrity. It has to be a part of them. You can teach them anything else.
Well, Pastor, one last question that I want to ask before we're out of time today. You know, we're encouraging people to be really diligent employees and to do what's right at the company that they work for. But why does God require us to work so diligently maybe for someone whom we don't respect because they're dishonest themselves?
That is life. You know, we're still in the devil's world. I'm sorry, Jesus hasn't come back and made the kingdoms of this world the kingdoms of our God. And in the meantime, we are in the devil's world. Christians always want to work for Christians. You can't do that. Salt doesn't salt salt. Salts meat. You know, it salts the things that can decay. And God has called us to go into all the world and to preach the gospel. All the world also means the place where you work. And you're going to be around people that you don't agree with, that you don't like, but welcome to life. The people in authority over you, always there's going to be people that you don't like: the policeman on the corner, you don't like the commanding officer you had in the military. There's a lot of women don't respect their husbands that much because he doesn't do things that are right. Oftentimes kids that get saved suddenly lose respect for their parents because their parents don't have the type of ideals. Well, submitting to authority in life does not mean you agree with authority. It means that you look at them and respect the position they're in. There's been presidents in this country I had very little respect for, but you know what? If they walked in the room, I would honor them for the office they stand in. And that's just part of life. So going to work and respecting that person who's over you, actually that integrity you have in you can open up the door for them to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I worked in a grocery store many years ago and raised in a Christian home, knew Jesus all my life. When I went to work there, one day I was so angry. Some lady came in and wanted this sack that way. I sacked it. She said, no, take it all out, do it this way. It still wasn't right. By the time I got the car, you know, everything was wrong. I came back in, I was smashing carts all over the place, and I went back up to one of the counters, and the lady that was checking out groceries looked at me and she said, I've never seen you mad. Oh, gosh, that struck me. I thought, there went my witness right out the window.
Yeah.
You know, so I run into customers I don't like. So I mean employees I don't like. I'm not there to please them. I'm there to please the Lord. And my job is to be done before the Lord.
That's
and
right.
that, I didn't realize it. My lack of anger up until that point had spoken to this woman.
Yes.
Suddenly, she saw a different me.
Well, and you know what else, Pastor, and I think this is a good thing for us to say just as we're ending, is that just because somebody else is doing something wrong, that doesn't give me a license to do something wrong.
Right.
You know, if I'm working for a boss that I can't respect because I know there's immorality in his life, or I know he's, you know, doing dishonest things, or he's not treating people right, me coming down to his level
Right.
is no kind of a witness.
No.
And so I think a lot of people, I think a lot of Christians think that it's okay for them to do dishonest things because everybody else does it.
Right.
But God got across to me a long time ago. He said, look, you've asked me for a lot. Do you want it or not?
Right.
Well, yes, Lord, I do. Well, then if you do, you can't act like everybody else.
Right.
You have to do what I tell you to do.
1 Peter chapter 2 is the best chapter on learning to work for people you don't respect. And right in the middle of it says, Jesus was your example. He stood before rulers he didn't appreciate, that didn't know, that struck him, and in everything he kept turning over to the Lord. He is our example. It starts out with employees toward their bosses, and then it goes and says, likewise, wives. You know, to your husbands, you know, he may not be the best example of Jesus Christ, but through your example of integrity, you can win him over to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
Well, that goes back all the way to government leaders and all the way back into the workplace.
Well, I do think that we need to learn a lot more and keep ourselves refreshed in what the Bible says about how to respond to the authority that you're
Right.
under, because in our society today, we just see rebellion everywhere we turn around. And part of the reason why people say they rebel is because they can't respect anybody,
Right.
which is understandable, but we still have to live before God
Right.
and do what he tells us to do, and then we can trust God for the reward.
Exactly.
So, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks
I've
for
really
having me.
enjoyed having you. Well, coming up is some information that will help you on your journey to developing a life of integrity. Don't turn the channel, because I want to pray for you right after this.